video. That's a lot better. All right, I can see you there. Now tell me, can you see this right here? You jerk. We're doing good. All right, let's begin. Thank you very much for coming. You had quite the commute to get up here. I'm glad you.
It's a beautiful drive, though. You get up to Olympia and you take 101 and then some other highways I can't remember. It's a really pretty drive.
This
So
this is God's country, and I love it up here. I'm from the Lewis County area originally, but when I found this area after the last deployment, I I fell in love with it, and it's a cool spot.
it,
Definitely a cool spot.
it's real pretty up here.
So now, tell me what I asked you a little bit ago, but what is what's your MOS that you were in? When did you come into the guard?
So after a rough childhood, uh, and after my junior year of high school, I joined the Army National Guard in Washington in the split option program. So after my junior year of high school, they sent me down to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, did boot camp. They sent me back home then, did my senior year of high school as a soldier,
Oh wow!
underage soldier, I guess, technically. And then the night I graduated, they sent me to MEPS to go to a hotel. And the next morning, I flew to Maryland to go to AIT for a 63 Delta. It's a mechanic, but the official term is, or verbiage is, self-propelled field artillery systems mechanic.
Now, did you grow up down in Vancouver area?
Yes.
Did you how did you find the guard? I mean, was a recruiter at school, or was that did you just say, hey, um, I want something different? Was there family members who were like,
Somebody I grew up with had joined the Guard and did the same thing. He joined in the split option program. Um, and I was talking to him about it, and I always thought soldiers were cool. You know, you're a kid, you're a teenager, and there were recruiters there, and I remember seeing Marines and Army guys, and active duty, and I didn't know much about the military, and not much was explained when I joined. I thought it was going to be full time. I had no idea, but I signed up, and life takes on characters of their own, and the journey there begins.
what year was it that you joined again?
98.
98. So holy smokes.
27 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and you pick an interesting time to come in
Mm.
because I came in 2000, but you also were in just long enough to know things were about to change drastically. We're 2001, 9/11.
Mm.
Where were you at when that happened?
So, as an M-Day soldier, and for your viewers who don't know, an M-Day soldier is a part-time soldier, somebody who only does the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. Um, and I was actually going through some troubled times. Um, I was extremely irresponsible. I couldn't work a job more than a couple weeks, couple months. You know, terrible job is a terrible job, and it's terrible pay. People who you're working with are hard to work with, so to speak. Trying to keep it polite for your viewers. Um,
What kind of work were you doing?
oh, I did yard maintenance for a little while, and that was minimum wage. And the business owner would constantly cut my hours, like traveling in between yards and stuff. He'd say, "Oh, I can't afford this. I'll get you back, in a couple of weeks. So I'm gonna, the travel time between, customers. I'm gonna have to cut some of that time out because you're not working anyways." I'm 19, 20 years old. I don't know any different anyways. And I have terrible work history. And then I got in trouble with the law a little bit, to tell you how troubled I was. Um, after that, after I got in trouble, I woke up quite a bit, um, but I was still pretty irresponsible. I couldn't hold a job, um, and I was very, I think the word is, I had a lot of demons, so to speak.
When you come, when you have a rough background, and I'm picking up on childhood was probably not the best
Hmm.
before going in.
Uh, Single mom. I was an entrapment baby,
Oh,
and obviously, so she's also a covert narcissist, and I was the how to put it. And I've done enough research on this to know, because the word narcissist gets thrown around a lot. She actually checks all the boxes for being a covert narcissist.
well, and for our friends that, if you're a soldier on here, you're pretty aware of what an entrapment baby is. A lot of soldiers end up getting married in circumstances that maybe they weren't planning on. Um, to go through that same thing. Was your father in the military?
He was in the Navy, and they were docked in downtown Portland in the Willamette,
Wow.
right?
Whoa.
And I was lied to my whole life about him. We actually just met a few years back.
How did that go?
Really well. He's actually a really good dude.
What did he think about having a son? Was he no?
He knew about me.
He did know about. Okay.
Yes.
Was he disappointed that you went guard and not Navy? What was
Uh,
like?
we threw a little bit back and forth, and he said, "Oh, it's all right that you didn't join the Navy." I said, "That's all right. Not everybody can be perfect and join the Guard. I mean."
Right on, right on. I got a little bit of flack calling home, having had four grandfathers that were in World War II and the Korean War, and my dad was in Vietnam, and they were all Navy. My
Well,
stepdad was Navy. I grew up on a couple of different Navy bases at different times, and that was the first question I got was, "Proud of you, but why the Army? Why the Army?" And my whole thing was I knew what it was like seeing them gone for 6 months at a time or 8 months at a time. I wanted no part of that. My goodness, we will be taking a break on that. I'm gonna fix that. Hang on.
Okay. Do you need me to?
Yeah, let
Okay.
me.
I guess this is where you're going to edit.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
this would be a
That's unfortunate.
that should be a go.
All right.
So obviously, I'll be working on some things with this when I finally get the paneling. But
Hmm.
good to know. So you get to meet your biological dad. What was that like for you? Did it answer some questions for you? Did it motivate you?
It answered a lot of questions. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it motivation, because his wife had found me on Facebook and friend requested me. And I sat on that for a couple of weeks, because I know the name, the last name, and I'm a researcher. And somebody I was dating at the time had I think it's called Spokio, and she had a Spokio account. So we started inputting the names and started putting the pieces together. I'm like, okay. And they got married shortly after I was born, which is funny. So I accepted the friend request, sat on that for another couple weeks because I'm trying to figure out how to word a message to her. Um, and I messaged her just something simple. I recognize the last name, and I see in your friends group that there's another certain individual that's in there, and I'm curious. And I left it at that. A couple days, a week later, she messaged me back and said, um, I'll let Ron talk to you. He'll be back in December. This was around like September, November, or October timeframe. I'm thinking, because all I have are these, what my mother told me that I didn't know were lies. I'm thinking, is he in jail? Is he in the hospital? Does he have cancer? Are they reaching out because he needs a kidney or bone marrow or something? You know, I'm like, so now I'm kind of on guard. I was on guard before because I grew up having to guard my feelings and myself. Um, oh shoot, bunch of time goes by. December, nothing. Don't hear anything. So I just kind of not really let it go, but I would think about it from time to time. And the person I was seeing, we broke up. I was living in the Chicago area at the time.
Oh,
um, uh,
on purpose.
yes,
Wow.
I can explain.
Yeah.
Because that'll go with the life story. Um, so um, around April, May timeframe, I reached out because before then I'd sent uh, my biological father a friend request on Facebook and he accepted. So I sent him a message. And I tried to keep it as neutral as possible. You know, hey, I've always been really curious about you, because I've let a lot of that hatred go for him. I let all of it go. But I would like to get to know you. And because I've been so curious, but if you don't want that, then that's okay. And that wasn't like hyperbole where I'm saying it to say it. Like, I was actually okay with, like, if he just wanted to be Facebook friends and that's it, like, that's fine. And he messaged me back. He gave me a cell phone number. A couple hours later, we actually talked on the phone for probably 3 hours.
Holy smokes!
Yeah,
What's going through your mind when you finally get to talk to him?
it's more surprise, because I've always,
Because
like,
you've been given a narrative now for like however many years,
yeah.
and now you're talking to them in person, and it's not matching up. I'm assuming.
Not necessarily. We didn't dive deep into things because it was a phone call. I was driving regional at the time, semi truck. Leave Monday, come back Friday, out of the Chicago area. Um, and I just made a delivery. I was back on the highway in Minnesota, I think, headed back towards Chicago, and we had talked for 3 hours, kept things kind of light. I told him that I was moving back to the Pacific Northwest. He tells me that he had just moved to Tennessee. I'm like, that's not that far away. He lived 6 or 8 hours from where I was staying at the time, which is in Moni, Illinois, about 45 minutes south of Chicago. And he invited me over to stay with him for a couple of days. I thought, okay. So in June, because the plan was to June to move back to the Pacific Northwest, and I thought, all right, I'll just take a few extra days, detour, go down, see him, but be on guard the whole time, obviously. And it went great.
Right on.
Because I was told, one of the things I was told about him was that he'd gotten kicked out of the Navy for dealing drugs. Well, you and I both know, and our viewers know, when you get dishonorably discharged from any branch of the military, you are immediately disqualified for any VA benefits. When I was there sitting on his porch, hanging out with him and his wife, he got a call from the VA confirming a doctor's appointment. That was like clue number one, like, oh crap. So then I started asking questions here and there and finding out that he did actually want to spend time with me, but my mother kept me away from him. Like in court, she would lie to the judge. I started digging up old court documents, and because everything's recorded in a courtroom, even in the '80s. And in the '80s, they didn't have DNA testing. They would do like a blood type test. So he was always like, well, I wasn't quite sure, but I never had pictures of you or anything. I have photos of him and I standing next to each other. It's a spitting image. Definitely tell we're related. You see, like his dad, when he was, a young man in his 20s, and you put that next to a picture of me in my 20s, we could be twins. Not that close, but like, yeah.
You could definitely see the
Oh,
resemblance.
yeah. And I was also told that um, none of his family wanted anything to do with me. Like I was a embarrassment baby. As soon as I got in contact with Ron, his brother reached out to me. His sister reached out to me. Because when I was making my way back across the United States, dragging my travel trailer, I have an uncle who lives in Fallon, Nevada, near Reno.
That's where I graduated high school. Right on.
He works as a civilian at the naval base there. So Uncle Corgi reached out to me and said, "Hey, if you're in the area, I'll drive up. We can have lunch." And I'm like, "Okay, sure." And he goes, "Oh." So I picked a place. He, later, I found out he had to drive like an hour and a half to come up to see me. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Just to have lunch with me. He's retired, but still, that's
Yeah.
round trip 3 hours of driving just to see somebody he's never met. You know, like there's
Oh,
another.
it's almost like driving 3 hours to come see somebody you haven't seen in how many years?
It's
Yeah.
been a long time since you and I have seen each other.
I think the last time I saw you was when you all returned from the second deployment
Mm.
in 2009. I'm
So I
thinking,
didn't come back in 2009.
did you stay?
Hmm.
Okay, then no. I have not seen him since he left for the second deployment in 2008 then. So it's been a day or two since we've got to catch up.
Yeah.
Man, man. How did so originally service battery?
Mm-mm.
Were you Vancouver? Which
I was Det 1 HHB, the detachment out of Vancouver.
wow. I just assumed being on the mechanic end of things, you would have been service battery.
Now they did eventually, I think 06, 07, they pulled all the mechanics from the batteries and they converted service battery into golf company.
I remember that.
And it kind of made sense because I can remember we'd go out to the field and be in the combat trans and first sergeant or somebody would come by, oh, I need to pull you, and you for a detail. Like, well, just because the mechanics are doing anything right now, we could, at that point, we could be like, you need to go talk to first sergeant of golf company. I'm here to support you. Like that's really nice because if a vehicle breaks down, oh, we don't have mechanics to support us now because they're off filling sandbags or whatever, or guarding ammo.
I believe me on the fueler side, we got pulled to a lot of different details, and
Yes.
and the only thing that saved our bacon on a few were certain NCOs that weren't even in our section that were like very clear about no, they need to be at these fuel points for when we come through,
Mm-hmm.
and um, otherwise we would get grabbed left and right for different details. And for those of you that haven't been in the military life, details are that fun side caveat that they don't tell you about when you enlist. In other words, you can get yanked for any section for any reason when they don't have enough bodies to throw at something. So
Go
that's
do weird tasks. Go empty a Connex so people can count things and then put it back. And then somebody else comes along and says it needs to be done again. I don't think your numbers are right. So
I
guess
don't.
what? You do it again.
If I never see another Connex, I'll be okay with that. I think I can get through life without dealing with another Connex.
Oh, that's funny.
Man. So now tell me, because how old are you in the first deployment? 2003 when we get, because we're at Fort Lewis.
God, I was a baby. I was 22 years old. Yeah,
Man,
just a just a kid, a child.
what was going through your mind? How did you feel about that whole process of like, hey, because 9/11's already happened. We're now have been mobilizing, prepping. and heading to theater. You know, we're living training on Fort Lewis for, I can't remember, it was 2 months or 3 months.
Yeah, it's hard to remember. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
I do remember when it happened. I got up the next day. Or I got up. I was watching the news because it's all over the news. And the only thing that went through my mind was, "Oh Lord, we're going to war." I They didn't even say who had done it, how it, obviously we could see how it was done, but the inner details that came out later, it just, I don't know. I knew we're going to war. Crap.
Yeah, yeah. It was, so at this point you've been on MD status for 5 years. Were you stop loss when we left, or were you close to the end of your?
um, Gosh, it's hard to remember because it was a 6 and 2 enlistment for 6 years active as an MD and then 2 years IRR. Um,
So you got your GI Bill and your VA loan, all that
mhm.
piece.
uh, Gosh, I don't remember. I want to say it was towards the end of my enlistment because my, I guess you could call it my my anniversary is April with the military. Um, so we got over there. We landed in Kuwait. Uh, we left we left McCord Air Force Base February 21st, 2004. That's when we got on a C-17. I was part of advance party, and we left. Yeah, we left McCord Air Force Base somewhere around the evening time, I think. That's hard to remember. And then just a few short months later, I turned 23.
I forgot all about loading up out of McCord. That was the most, just, I remember, because they didn't put a lot of the sensitive items into the connexes. We were all carrying like 3 and 4 weapons, night vision, all that. We get on a 747. Now I've never, even on the civilian side, I had never been on a 747 before.
Hmm.
And we get on there and we are loaded with all of our gear, all these weapons, and we get to sit in these like incredibly nice seats. I don't I fly, I usually fly with the sheep and the goats. So I'm in this amazing airline seat, and I'm just loaded with weapons and night vision and all this stuff. And every time one of you has to go to the latrine, it's a nightmare of getting up with all of your gear, having to have our uh, the bolts in our pocket because they did not want them in the weapon for any chance of, in case somebody happened to have a round in their uh, weapon.
Interesting.
It was, yeah, it was the most awkward. It was the most awkward transportation that I think I had ever been on.
Hmm.
But I do remember the only time that I had ever seen the Statue of Liberty was as we flew out of New York at night on that same uh, aircraft, and we could see it from the sky as we were going lit up, and that was just such a uh, that was a big moment of like, wow, I never actually got to visit it, still have never got to go see it, and my only time seeing it was leaving home to go fight in another country.
Right. Makes it surreal.
Now, where we get to theater, where do you go?
Kuwait. Lucky, unlucky, call it what you want.
And where were you at for that part of the deployment?
I was at the S.P.O.D, Seaport of Debarkation.
Which is which is heaven on earth if you like living in an environmental waste dump.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So there's no EPA over there. So they had refineries and a concrete, I don't know if you call it a factory. Um, and they just, if there's any chemicals they don't need or want, they just release it into the air. There was several times where we had to put on gas masks because the chlorine levels in the air and the sulfur levels in the air had risen way too high, dangerously high. And there was a constant smell of chemicals in the air.
That was one of the only PT tests that I never finished was when that sulfur plant exploded and the sulfur came shooting through the camp, and they had to stop. I think it was myself and a couple of others, but they had to stop us, and about 20 people ended up into the TMC because of sulfur, getting the sulfur in their eyes, their lungs, and I will tell you what, sulfur clears your lungs out in a hurry. Um, but yeah, that was they completely had to stop the PT test because of that.
Ugh, that was so horrible.
It was yeah, I don't miss the S.P.O.D. I don't have it's funny, the strongest memory I have about it was uh, Jason Adams and I got to talk last a few weeks ago, and it was that thing that we all had in common was basically being Groundhog Day, and day after day the calendar never seemed to move, and
Mm-hmm.
it was these incredibly long days, like 16-hour days sometimes, of just doing the same thing over and over and over, and we didn't really have a
Outlet.
yeah, there was no, not really MWR tents there. There was kind of a tent, I think, at the chaplain's office where they'd have like books and soap, and sometimes they'd bring in like free coffee and beef jerky. Care packages would come in, and they would just leave them for us. And but
So there was a weight room, and
that's
then it sort of MWR, but it wasn't really anything. We didn't have. I think we had Subway at camp. You
I
know
think
the
yeah, there was a Subway and a Baskin Robbins trailer that they had brought in. I remember over by the little shop at, or the little uh,
remember that coffee shop that Jim used to run.
the Cup of Joe,
Yeah, Cup of
Cup of
Joe.
Joe.
Definitely find me over there hanging out because better than just doing nothing.
I
You know.
I got to share a little bit with you, but that was part of the reason I
Mm,
started this podcast with Jim Clinton was uh, when he passed away. Um, he was a story that I know didn't get told, and I don't know how many soldiers got just a little bit of relief by going over to that coffee shop that he made. All the donated coffee. Whenever we get donated coffee, we would take it to this tent that got left behind by the unit that was before us, and there was just enough power outlets to it that I think he could run a radio, a coffee pot, maybe two coffee pots. I can't remember. Um, and there was some lighting, but it was the only place in this chemical dump wasteland that we could get away from the brass, get away from the first sergeant,
mm,
and sit down, have a cup of coffee, and just be separated from it all.
yeah.
And
And Jim ran it full time for a while.
that was his baby.
He was such a good dude. I've never met a soldier like him before, ever. I mean, I've never heard that guy talk bad about anybody. He always had a positive vibe. We could be in the muck, in the mud, it's freezing or it's 135 out, and he'd be like, "Yeah, it kind of sucks, but like Jim, you disgust me. You're so positive." you know, like, come on.
I think what impressed me the most about him was how that time that he just donated to that. I mean,
He did it in his free
yeah,
time.
he did it in his free time, and free
Yeah.
time wasn't something that a lot of us had, and
Mm.
I think that alone was just such the other soldiers I've talked to that went there said the same thing. It was like, hey, that was the one place where I could sit down and just feel like a man again, or feel like a human.
At
You
least
know, it
for
just,
5 minutes,
did
even.
not, was not worried about everything else. And so yeah, definitely miss him. Sorry I missed his funeral. It was how you got to go. How was that? Was there
There was a lot of people there.
right on?
A lot of people. Uh, his stepkids were there. Very emotional and touching speeches. Um, and they just reiterated the things I knew about him. Even though I hadn't seen the guy for probably 20 years, he was still the same guy. Country loving, gun touting, you know, good dude, really good dude. This world is a
It
little bit less
little
now
bit
that
less
he's not
without
in it.
him. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for going. Thank you for. I hope there was a lot of us there.
There was a few of us, not too many.
We're di- we're dying off or moving out. Is the thing that was that other piece of this is like I'm amazed at how many of our group have passed away now, and it's strange. When you think about it, it's been over 20 years since we mobilized. We're on 20, you're 25 now, I think, since the mobilization. It's
Yeah,
the first one,
yeah. 20
2003.
years since we've come home.
Jeez.
It's been 20 years, 22 years since
Yeah,
we
yeah,
mobilized.
2005. Holy smokes.
Yeah, 20 years.
Holy smokes. And I'll have been out 5 years at the end of this month.
I didn't realize it's been that long since
Yeah,
you've retired.
yeah.
Wow.
When did you cut bait and run? When did you go? Did you go for the 20, or did you? No, you just.
So I think that would be, if we can go chronologically with my career, my 12 years that I was in. So we'll say, let's start with um, 2003, the end of the summer. We get the call. I think what did they call it? Raging Bull at the time.
Raging,
I didn't
Raging Bull or Roaring Bull. I always get it backwards, but yeah.
I didn't even know what those were. I was working retail at Big Lots as a store stalker. I was actually starting to get my proverbial stuff together, being a little responsible. And I get a call, Raging Bull. I didn't even know what that meant, but I knew it was from a unit. And this is Sergeant so and so, Raging Bull. Roger. Click. Well, this and this just happened. Not, they're doing some fighting overseas. I'm like, well, I have a few brain cells to rub together. So I'm like, well, that must mean we're going. And then sure enough, I get a call like a month later, a couple weeks later. Hey, this is the date. Be at the Vancouver barracks at this day and this time. Have everything with you. Oh crap, it's real. It's real now. It's real, real. As the kids say, real, real.
Was your Now, did you have family down there that were? Did they know? Like, were you married at all, or who was who was worried for you when you got that alert letter
Honestly,
or call?
I don't know. I was dating somebody at the time. Yeah, she was worried about me. My parents, I don't know, because my mother and my stepdad, he's a typical person who marries a narcissist, enabler, or definitely codependent. So whatever she says, it goes, kind of thing. So they were, in their own weird way, I'm sure they were worried about me, but to tell you the type of mother that I had was, because I didn't know at the time she was a narcissist. I went up to her, I'm a 22-year-old kid. Oh, going to war, mom. She said, of course, oh, I want you to be safe. She said, I'm not kidding when I say this. She said, if you come home and become an alcoholic, I'll understand. Thanks for the vote of confidence, mother.
Whoa,
Yeah.
whoa.
And I did have a drinking problem and a drug problem. at one point. So we train. I get transitioned from HHB to now service battery. Go overseas. People get shuffled around. MTO changes, unit designators. It's all the same units. It's just who's in what versus what. It was also weird when we got over there because we got over there as advanced party, and the senior NCOs had shown up to uh, Base Defense Operations Center, something like that, BDOC maybe, at Camp Arif John. And we show up and they're like, hey, we're with the Washington National Guard. Maybe you heard of us. And they look at us like, why are you here? Who are you? They didn't even know.
Wow.
They're like, I go do stuff, I guess. Because we did a little bit of security at Camp Arif John until somebody shoved us off to the S.P.O.D. And then I got a little bit of trouble while I was over there. Not for anything you would think. I had a disagreement with a corporal, and I was a specialist at the time in 2004, so I had been a specialist for 4 years at that point. And it just didn't go well. Some things were said, some not truths were said about me, and I applied physical force when I shouldn't have. I didn't have any administrative action taken against me. But at that point, I was with.
Well, we got this on tape. Somebody actually got in trouble over there and did not get an administrative action put against them. I just high five. That was you're like one of maybe two people I know that happened to. Everybody. I mean, you remember the Wall of Shame at Fort Lewis?
Oh,
Like how many people had gotten
Article 15.
Article 15s
After
or
Article
something?
15, oh, my Lanta. So,
Sorry.
no, you're all right. I was doing QRF and roving patrol for our little mini camp at the S.P.O.D. After that altercation, I got kicked off of QRF/roving patrol for the camp.
Were you on Brown's group, Sergeant Brown?
Stewart.
Stewart. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was like I was QRF at Arif John, but I not at S.P.O.D. So I just
Yep.
just checking, just
Yeah.
checking.
I got kicked off of that and got put with other people doing camp security, gate guard tower stuff. Guard tower stuff is the absolute worst in the entire world to do any kind of work whatsoever. You just sit there and watch for 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, whatever they need at the time.
Yeah.
That is, and especially for a young man full of adrenaline and testosterone and training, and go sit here behind machine gun for all your time. Oh, it was so bad.
And that was at the beginning of the war. That's the thing, is there wasn't such a thing as days off. I mean, I
Mm.
don't know. I think they gave me. I remember going 30 days straight one time and getting a day off, and then going another 20 days and getting a day off, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I had 2 days off within a 20-day period.
Mm.
I was like, and I was not bragging about it to anybody. I did not want to rub it in to anybody, but I was like, holy smokes, I had 2 days of like,
Especially, you were an NCO at the time?
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, so NCOs got zero time off over there. Zero.
Because I remember I do like 8 hours at the gate, and then go do another however many hours at the talk or the B doc, whatever the where the phones and the computer were at.
Yeah, you just
Covering
call it.
kind of like
There's
staff duty.
talk, there's BDOC, or you could call it a BSOC, or
I just know it's the place where I found out that we had a DSN line and I could make calls home for free.
or get
Um,
minute by minute. minute per minute on those calling cards. And there was less of a delay when you would talk as well.
Yeah, yeah. It was. I always knew to call the Air Force because they were a lot better about letting us. You could talk. You could talk to your folks back home without having somebody sitting there clicking the phone on you, hanging up while you were talking to somebody back home.
Yeah.
Those were good days.
Yeah, because Captain Elliott, well, at the time he was a captain. He would walk in and want to have a meeting. So then senior NCOs would come by and just be like, "This conversation's done." Click. You're like, "I was about to say I love you. Guess not."
Yeah, yeah. So now we get back home.
February 2005,
February 2005.
8:39 in the morning.
You're a glutton for punishment, though. You stay in. Did you sign for a bonus, or did you decide?
I was letting. I want to say I still had time left. This is where things get fuzzy for me because I stayed at Fort Lewis. They asked us this insane questionnaire, if you remember, when you were out processing at North Fort Lewis. You know, at the bubbles, and they ask you about 8.3 million questions.
I came back twice during the deployment, so I ended up staying active duty for like 2.5 years on that particular deployment.
So they asked us a series of questions, and I believe it was designed to screen us for PTSD. And I answered truthfully, but I grew up clinically depressed. They didn't say, is it because of this or this? So I answered truthfully, and I ended up becoming what's known as a holdover. And that's somebody who doesn't get released from active duty because they want to, if you have an ailment or something, they need to keep you on active duty to fix you. So I got put in medical holdover and kept on active duty, moved over to main Fort Lewis. And I went through the steps and the motions that they needed. The psychologist, the military psychologist at was it Madigan, and I was deemed as not having PTSD. But this is also within the first 30 days of coming home, so we're all ecstatic and happy. And I got released. I got sent home. I got on unemployment, as a lot of us did, because a lot of us came home to not having a job. And I know some of you out there watching have probably done the research to know that a job has to be held for you. However, if the job is deemed not necessary anymore, they can do away with it kind of
Under the table.
There's because you've been gone for a year and a half, so they just change the job title, give it to somebody else so they can have that role filled. Because let's be honest, the world moved on. Even though we left, the world kept going forward while we're going backwards.
A lot of soldiers came home to, and it's one of those things we share on here, but came home and home was gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, either somebody else was living in their house, or divorced or separated somewhere in the process from when we got mobilized to by the time they got home, or like in my case, right after you get home.
Like Thurman. Do you remember his situation?
Was he the one that
he was taken advantage of by a woman? Partially, he let himself because before he wasn't making very good money, and then he met a woman. She knew he was going overseas.
Oh.
And I think she's a military predator, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And then decide, oh, let's get married, let's this, that. And then he came home to more debt and absolutely zero money.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. And it's a real I think every young soldier out there needs to understand about that possibility, getting those high interest debts on the sports car, and
you'll never prevent that.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's be honest, Brian.
Yeah. Hey, I will say that I came home from my last deployment to a Mustang, but there were no kids at the house anymore. you know, there was life was, we were kid free and getting ready for that next chapter in life. So it was, but it wasn't any 20%, what, 23 or 25% interest
Oof,
rate. Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
yeah.
So
Just
come home.
come home.
Um, we had, as M-Day soldiers, I think we were given like 6 months off or something like that, or like 3 months or 6 months. Like, you don't have to report. Like, you've been through all this crap. You don't have to report for a while, or something along those lines.
Like terminal leave, you get like 90 days usually. I believe you have 90 days when you first come back before you have to report.
Well, I mean, report as in like we didn't have drill weekend. That's when we go do our weekend warrior stuff. I started partying. I had I'd bought a crotch rocket. I'd always been into motorcycles and riding, and I started drinking heavily every night. I didn't wake up having a beer, but for me to have 12, 14, 16, 18 beers in a night was not uncommon at the time. After doing that for a few months, I was at a party and somebody introduced cocaine. And I was still technically in at the time. I'm not proud of it, but it's what happened. Um, Growing up clinically depressed, um, to tell you how depressed I was growing up, um, how many teenagers do you know of in our generation grew up thinking about killing themselves because they just wanted to end the negative thoughts in their mind? Well, I started using cocaine, and as soon as I used it, it made me feel euphoric, which is the exact opposite of how I've spent 24 years of my life. Immediately became addicted to it. Um, and I was told to never try it because of my depression. Towards, I want to say, September, around September, I got a call. Because if you remember, in 2005, the summer of 2005, Hurricane Katrina / Rita had messed up Southeast United States. So around September, I'd gotten a call. Says, hey, do you want to go down to New Orleans to help out? Disaster relief, do patrols, maybe help people clean up. Oh, that would be amazing. Come back from war, even though it was Kuwait, it was safe, but still war. Your subconscious still recognizes it's a dangerous area. So go from that to going to help, which is the actual job of the National Guard, is to help out locally. That would be amazing. Hung up the phone, instantly, holy crap, I have a drinking problem and a drug problem, and I'm supposed to be a soldier. That's not right. Oh crap. I had a week before I had to report, so I locked myself in my bedroom and detoxed. No intervention, no nothing, just
Oh,
I have to stop. This is not okay. I'm a soldier. This is not, I'm a representation of the United States military and I have a drinking and a drug problem. I have to cut this out right now. And I did. No intervention. Nobody told me. I just did it. Yeah.
do you realize like what a small percentage of folks ever are able to do that? I mean, you're definitely unique in that aspect. Did you eventually ever get a treatment counselor or go for any help? Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic because now you and I could sit down, have a drink, and I don't feel the need to continue drinking. Like one beer, okay, we're done. That's it. And it's not like I actively think, okay, I'm not having any more beers because I don't want people to think I have a drinking problem. It's okay, I have a long drive, you know, ahead of me and I have a CDL. If you and I have a beer, then that's it because the responsible thing to do is to not drink anymore because I have to drive.
Now, how did you not end up an 88 Mike? You get, I mean,
Because I joined, I wanted to be a mechanic. It, turning wrenches and fixing things always intrigued me as a kid. Um, and military mechanics, being a mechanic in the military is so vastly different than being a civilian mechanic, because the systems in military vehicles are simple on purpose so that they can be fixed fast and without much complication. If every time, like say, a Humvee wouldn't fire because there's a certain check engine light, we'd be in a lot of trouble. If I need to jump in that Humvee and take off quick, fast, and in a hurry, but every time I gotta troubleshoot a vehicle, I gotta pull out a laptop. Like, the enemy doesn't care about that laptop. If it's not firing, there's certain things we check, and then if it still ain't, get the wrecker up, yank it out of there.
no. Second deployment comes 2008.
Well, there's actually more before then.
What did you do?
I didn't do
Oh,
it.
okay.
No. There's story to it.
Okay, okay.
So, in early 2006, I'd actually gotten out for a little bit. It was at the end of my 8 years. I'd gotten out for a few months.
So you had an actual break-in service.
Yes, like 3 months or something.
That's bad, and I'm going to tell you why. Because if he had decided to stay in for his 20, he would have had to do 21 years to get his retirement. Because even a 24-hour break in service gives you what they call a bad year, and so you've got to stay on for another year. But I'm done lecturing. Go ahead, carry on.
2006, I'd gotten out for a few months. I wanted to do something different. Um, I don't want to talk negatively about the people in 2 of the 146 or 181 at the time, but there was a lot of micromanaging going on. Um,
It's a different beast. I know going from 2146 to going from 81st into 66 aviation,
hmm,
it was like night and day the way things operated, and so it's one of those things where I think 81st gives you a lot of good lessons for
how not to be.
maybe how not to be, but endurance, definitely learning how to navigate different leadership structures, entities.
That was
uh,
good lessons there. Yes.
yeah, it definitely, I feel like if you could go through 81st and still come out, you know, with your ethics, your moral base, or just your fortitude, I think it prepares you for things beyond the military, and makes you appreciate when you do go into different type of units or brigades.
Which
uh,
is what happened.
Nice.
So I'd gotten back in, um, but I joined 96 Troop Command out of Spokane. I think it's Spokane. I joined the 420th Chemical Battalion, and I became a wheeled vehicle mechanic. And there was OJT, but most of the work I had done was doing wheeled vehicle work as a howitzer mechanic, which is fine. When you join as a mechanic, it's not like you're only a howitzer mechanic, that's all you work on. No, it's your maintenance. Go fix. You're like, okay, I'll go fix stuff, you know. Um, and I'd actually stopped, I wasn't doing very well up until that point. Um, PTSD had uh, its claws in me at that point. I didn't know what was going on. You know, the military and the VA both told me, you don't have PTSD, you're fine. Um, I know now different. Uh, and this isn't something people want to hear, and I've never actually told anyone. I came close to being a statistic. Not close as in I was about to do it, but I was really starting to contemplate it because I didn't understand. I couldn't find work. My parents were harping on me. I was living with them at the time. Um, I was clean and sober, and I got a call from the active guard supply sergeant out of the 420th in Vancouver saying there is a full-time logistics technician position, which is a state level job. It was only like 15.50 an hour or something like that, but it was work. And I don't know if, like, on drill weekend, if he saw that I wasn't doing so hot or what, but Staff Sergeant Casey Avery, that dude saved my life. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for that. I was not doing well for so long. 2007, I started studying psychology, sociology, because I wanted to better understand myself. I'm doing better. I'm doing good. Um, this is going to be funny. Some people think it's false, but have you ever seen a show called The Pickup Artist on VH1? There's a dude who wears like a big hat and he teaches these dorky, nerdy guys on how to pick up on chicks and how to talk to them.
Oh, I
And
know.
there's like a
I know
step by.
about. I know about it. I don't have cable, but yeah, I have
It's an older show.
I've seen videos on it or clips of it.
It's
So
actually real. So I was sitting down. It was 2007, and I was getting ready to play World of Warcraft. We were getting ready to do a raid. That's where you and 19 or 24 or 39 of your friends get together to go kill a digital boss in the World of Warcraft. And I'd gotten off work early, so I was like, hey, Sergeant Avery, get off work a little early. I got this raid coming up. I'd like to get set up. Oh yeah, no problem. You know, I get home, I get everything set up, I get a couple of beers set out, and it just hits me like a ton of bricks. Like, oh, I have no personal life. I feel like a shell of a human, and I think I need to learn more of myself. Like, and it just all at once. And I get on the horn with the guy who runs the events, and I was like, hey, dude, I got to dip for a bit. Explained a little bit. And he was cool about it. We're still friends on Facebook, through World of Warcraft. And he goes, handle your personal life, man. Figure it out. Come back. There will always be a spot. You've been here since the beginning. Like, well, that's cool. So I started learning that, and initially it was I wanted to learn how to pick up on chicks because I'm a very step by step kind of person, analytical type, and it started out as like, here is a step by step method, but it also forces you to look within yourself to be the kind of person that women are attracted to. So when you start doing that, you have to dive deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and to really start to figure things out. In 2007, I'd actually pulled myself out of depression. No medication, but going through this and looking at it and actually analyzing it, talking to therapists and psychologists, reading articles. And it truly pulled me completely out of depression. I still have little dips here and there, but it was like 1% of what it was before then.
I gotta ask, if the program's God and Country, what is your faith background, or do you have a faith background? What was it all just personal tenacity that was helping you self reflect, or was there ever a point through this process where God or higher power or however you define it was working on you through this?
I'm non-denomination Christian. At the time, it's not like I actively said I was an atheist, because in 2007, that's when I met somebody who was a Mormon. Um, and through her, I started studying more into Christianity because, well, kind of have to. Obviously, it didn't work out, but it, even though I claimed atheism, I would still pray here and there. I don't know how to explain it. It's like maybe I was mad at him, mad at God, because it's so much strife even though it's a lot better than a lot of other people, but it's what I experienced and was going through and felt bad for me. Why would he let all of that go through one human? And I know that answer now because it made me a strong individual. And I do draw on that strength today. Every day I work on myself. Every day I have to. If I don't, it'd be so easy to go right back down that dark road.
It doesn't take a whole lot.
No, it doesn't.
Especially picking up the other habits. Um, that's one of the things that I've got to watch, just not only my own life, but the ebb and flow of other soldiers that I've served with, and
Oh,
watching them. I think when we came home on the first deployment, they hadn't they hadn't figured out the system yet. They hadn't figured out the process of you guys you guys have more challenges than you know. You might not have got shot at, you might not have gotten blown up, but you just went through something for a year that totally pulled you out of the life that you had
mm-hmm.
and put you in this completely different experience, different country, different set of rules,
Culture,
cult.
lifestyle, food, air, the scenery, everything. And we still
and
heard gunshots. Some of us did have pop shots taken at us from the freeway.
it was the thing is, when we came home, for a lot of us, home wasn't there when we
Mm-hmm.
came back, and I think that was that piece that Big Army didn't know how to fix, because the difference with the guard over the active duty is that we're not still with our units when we come home. We get scattered to the four winds. We all go back to whatever little town or community that we're from. Hopefully, you had some place to stay when you got back. I mean, I know there was a lot of us that didn't,
Mm.
and so that just kind of, I don't know. You lose that, you lose those people that you spent so much time with for the last year. You don't have them to say, "Hey, this is pissing me off," or "Hey, I'm struggling with this," or
Oh, to rely on,
yeah.
yeah,
It
yeah.
just, I think going into, for me, that I think the hardest thing coming back was just simple things like going through a grocery store
Without your battle buddy.
without your battle buddy, without, but nobody else is in uniform. Nothing.
Mm.
You think about that, like, that when you were in a shop at, or in a whatever area, that you had 7 to 20 people who knew how to respond to a pop shot, or something at the same way. You all had a way to react to it. When you come home and you're by yourself and you're sitting in there, I would start sweating. Like I would get so uncomfortable, and I would have to wait until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, to go grocery shopping,
Wow.
because there wasn't anybody in there, and I could get my stuff, and I didn't have all the all the unknowns walking around me when I came back. And that took about a good 3-4 months before I was comfortable with that.
So, because that's PTSD, and we know that. Um, Within the last 5 years, 10 years, a new study has actually come out to show that most soldiers who experience PTSD, it's not actually from the traumatic event itself or traumatic events. It's the cutoff of relationships that you had, that you developed while you're over there. And the easiest way to explain it for those watching that aren't soldiers, or even some that might be, to maybe help them better understand, is you develop a relationship with the guys around you. And some of them you might not even like, but you can rely on. They would take a bullet for you. Yeah, it's the training, but it's also the situation. And you know that fundamentally and subconsciously. And I mean, that transcends family and brotherhood. That's why we call each other brothers and sisters. Now we come home, and like you said, we get scattered to the four winds. That relationship that you have with all these people that you spend every waking day around. And sometimes you just want to choke them out and walk away. And now that relationship is ripped away. And when I figured that out around 2011 or 12, I recognized that PTSD is heartbreak. Because those relationships are never going to be the same.
And it's hard to explain to people that you spend so much time with those other people. You will spend more time in that year with those fellow soldiers because you're working, eating, fighting, sleeping together. You
Living in
think
the same area.
let's say you're fortunate to have a spouse and get to come home from work every day to them. You get 3 to 5 hours before you go to bed, that you get to spend with them, and then maybe you get to spend the weekend with them.
Hmm.
It will still take years to spend as much time with your spouse as you did in that 1 year with all those soldiers you deployed with. So that it's one of those strange things. We're always talking about home. I know just about every deployment. You're like your one focus, your one mission is to get back home and to get back to those who are waiting for you there.
Because in our mind, that's safety, that's sanctuary, that's not this crap, crazy war zone that we're in.
We don't You don't realize those ones that you're actually with are technically the family you have
Mm.
at that moment. We don't I think it's one of those things that as we get older we start appreciating what we have at the moment and what's going on. I think too often we're looking for, and not that it's a bad thing to be thinking about getting back home to family and all that, but I think a lot of us realized after the fact that, oh my gosh, we had it good with some of the folks there. We had it good with some of those times. Um, Now, I don't look back. I know a lot of folks are. And when I say don't look back, I look back on the people that I was with, and when I stepped out of that uniform, I was okay. It was like I knew, hey, I had done my service. If I had only served one term or one tour, I would have felt like I fulfilled my obligation to our country and served. But I know that I meet a lot of soldiers that after they get out, they can't move on to that next stage.
Mm-hmm. They feel like they have unfinished business. I had that same feeling.
I was about to ask, when did you feel like, hey, it was great, but I'm done now. Now I've got to now I've got to work on this new chapter.
Oh, getting out. So I never made it past specialist, even though I was at the time, I don't know how it works now. I was above the line. There was like one person ahead of me. I never got the phone call. Hey, do you want to accept this promotion? um, I was told by a few different first sergeants, hey, we're going to make it happen. We need NCOs over there. Cool. I wanted to eventually be a first sergeant because everything I started learning about social interaction, leadership, psychology, you know, the sociology behind it, I started understanding things really well. And I wanted to be a first sergeant. I wanted to be the difference because there's some good ones, there are a lot of bad ones. There's a lot of bad leadership in the military. And it's unfortunate because they were never taught anything better. And that's not talking smack about our military. Um, we deploy, we get over there October 2008. Um, around July, August, the Washington National Guard rotates back to the United States. When the relief unit showed up, I had asked if I could stay because I knew I was going to be getting out. I'd been a specialist for, gosh, 10 years, over 10 years. And I started weighing my options, the pros and cons, about staying in, sacrificing my weekends, 2 weeks a year, what the retirement is, what kind of paycheck, when can I start collecting those paychecks, the medical benefits. Yes, the medical benefits looked appealing, but the small monthly stipend that I can't start collecting until I'm 70, um, not worth it. The sacrifice of time. Um, I already had medical benefits because of my PTSD through the VA, and it took a little while for them to confirm it, but it didn't feel worth it to stay in. It was, if you remember the good old boy system, if you weren't liked very well, you weren't getting promoted. Um, and I didn't understand also how to make myself look better on paper. And I don't know. I got back January 2010, and I had like 109 days of leave saved up.
Wow.
So at that point, obviously I didn't sell it. I just took, and the last time I wore a uniform was January 2010. I landed in PDX after out processing and everything, Portland Airport, and I took the uniform off that night. And my last paycheck was April of 2010.
It's been, I think it's been almost 5 years since I've had it on, and I still remember that strange feeling of taking it off and setting it on my bed and just looking at it, knowing
I'm never going to wear that again in an official capacity. It's
I,
spooky feeling.
I kept one for a while just because, stop loss is a real thing and being recalled is a real thing. So I kept one for just in case.
Mm.
But I think with the new hip and gaining almost 100 pounds, I don't think they're gonna need me for the next conflict. Now, you go through all this, you restart your life.
Mm.
Bring us to today. How is life different for you now? Life before, there was life during the war. I always share this. There was life during the war, life after the war.
So at this point, I had kind of, as an adult, really woken up. At this point, I knew what to expect of myself, my PTSD, because I'd done enough research to know. I knew I had it.
And not to mess with the train of thought here, but knowing that, what do you tell those soldiers out there who are still struggling with it? Maybe from our deployment, maybe young ones that have come back. What would you tell any of the soldiers out there that are struggling with self harm, or I just can't get my days straight since I've come home? Where would you send them for help, or where?
Anywhere. There are countless civilian programs. You can Google it. You can call me. Or Brian, even 2 o'clock in the morning. I see you and I understand you, and it's okay. Your family may not understand because they're not truly going to, but I do. And it's okay to feel the way you feel. It really is. It can't be helped. The military would like to think that we're like these conditioned robots, and we're not. But
it takes a minute, a day, a year to get back to level.
took me several years to get close to level. I'm still not 100% level, but most people would never know because I hide it. But
Did you, in all this process, did you ever get married? Ever have little ones? You get no little ones?
no. So April 2010, which is funny. my last paycheck, my official ETS date. Those that don't know, that means ending term of service. Um, I met my ex-wife. Um, I was collecting unemployment at the time. The end of 2010, I got into a bike accident in the mountains. I got pretty messed up. I was hospitalized for a day, surgeries. Um, she took care of me, and that was why I stayed with her. I mean, I broke ribs, I had a concussion, I cracked my big toe, I shattered my right wrist so bad I had to have permanent hardware installed.
We've lost a lot of our guys from bike accidents. Just being honest. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
I never had the balance or coordination for it, but I'd have probably been right there with you at some point.
and it
You know?
wasn't chasing adrenaline because I had always been into motorcycles and cornering and things like that. Um, and it just I was riding beyond the means of the motorcycle, and I went down near past Cougar, between the Cougar and the Ranger station.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they're near the lookout point. Yeah, I totaled that motorcycle. We're going around a 25-mile-an-hour sweeper, um, and I entered the corner doing about 55, and I exited probably doing close to 70 something, and my rear tire slid out from me. Um, but she took care of me. She even went to the VA and got my meds. Um, she made sure I had food to eat. You know, the first couple of weeks after my accident, I was so messed up between the pain meds, the surgery, and just everything hurting. You know, I couldn't stand up longer than a couple of minutes because my concussion was so bad. Um, and then fast forward, uh, 2011, the Washington Work Source, that's what they call the unemployment in the state, uh, pulled me in because they wanted to have me do a resume class and look over my skills and qualifications. And okay, and the first place they made me apply was a trucking company as a mechanic. And I say unfortunately, but it was pretty fortunate. They picked me up right away. They're pro-military. I don't want to say the company because they're a big company, and I don't want to get sued if possible. Uh, they say they were pro-military, but I'd only been home for a year at this point, year and a half, and I struggled with sleep and getting up on time. I didn't have a drinking problem. That was still, that was long gone. But I struggled with socializing with coworkers because I was so used to joking around a certain way that I get around civilians. You can't joke around like that because it's too dark or it's gross or it's inappropriate and I didn't fit in well. I worked there like a year and a half before I was forced out. Became a hostile work environment. So I bounced around from shop to shop. Once you get 3 years of experience at the time as a diesel mechanic, you can pretty much get hired anywhere you want. So I'd worked for Peterbilt International, Spring Company doing suspension work. I did mobile mechanic work for a while. That was terrible, uh, absolutely terrible. Um, and then in 2015, around the time that her and I got married, I'd thrown my back out doing a brake job on a semi truck, and that's when I decided to get my CDL. I'll start breaking them instead of fixing them. So that summer, I I went through CDL school through Swift, and they had a deal at the time for veterans. Uh, Go through our school, month-long program. We'll get you your CDL. You have to pay for the tests with the state, but go through our training program and then drive for us for a year. You don't have to pay anything. Sounds pretty sweet. So I did it. Drove for him for a year. At the end of the year, um, one of my best friends was part-time living in Chicago, working in the film industry as a truck driver.
What kind of film industry?
Not the kind, right. No Johnny Sins out there. Not that kind of acting. Just regular TV shows and stuff. Um, he asked if I wanted to come out there and drive semi truck, or because all the equipment that's out, for filming, you have to have a CDL to move it. Cast trailers, cars, all that stuff. So I went out there for 3 months and worked on a show called Patriot, not the movie with Mel Gibson. There's an actual TV show, the first season. At the end of the 3 months, I came home to a divorce. So I got home October 2016. It was finalized in December, so we didn't have kids or community property. I got to keep what was mine. She kept what was hers. Clean split. I was pretty messed up for a while. Came home, got a job as a local truck driver, an hourly wage, overtime after 40. I generally worked 55 hours a week. Got left with a lot of debt. Busted my hump the first year and a half to get caught up on bills and paying things off, um, and then I did that for 3 years. And my experience working transportation in the film industry in Chicago was not a very good one because you work crazy hours. I mean, when I say you'll work an 18, 19-hour shift, you really will. And you'll get 3 or 4 hours of downtime, then you got to go right back to work.
I know I know the whole film industry. I was watching the thing on the folks who were with SAG Awards, to be able to be in the acting industry and get your insurance. Like you have to make over $24,000 a year,
Mm.
and it's only a very small percentage of the actors who actually make enough money to pay for their insurance. And I know all those film crews, it's ridiculous hours. Like they have these incredibly awkward times to film and shoot, and the cities, like a lot of times, a lot of those night shoots, it 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning when everything is closed, and so they can access the streets and all that. So you must have been doing, especially Chicago. Like what time of the year were you there? I mean,
I was there. I was there for 3 months, and we finished up in October. So October.
so you beat the winter
Oh yeah. Well, that year.
that year, yeah.
So 3 years later, after being a local truck driver, um, and by this point, I've got my stuff together. I'm actually being an adult, working jobs, but I'm trying to find the job to have because I go places, and I'm the kind of I maybe I'm a typical veteran. When people disrespect me and push me or try to push me around because I'm a nice guy, I'll plant my foot and push back because now as a civilian, I don't have to take that disrespect. Versus military, you just got to take it because if you talk back, you're insubordinate, and you can have administrative action taken against you. So I tend, like, if people, they get in a hurry and a rush and something's happened and, they want to, oh, just hurry up and go do it. I'm like, hey, I think you should think twice about talking to me like that. That's not okay. And I'll say it just like that, but it's pushback, and people don't like that. So, anyways, fast forward. 3 years later, my friend David calls me and he says, "Hey, want to come back to the film industry?" I don't think so, man. I don't know. There's different crew, different people. It's totally different with these individuals. Like, okay, well, what am I going to be doing? We're going to be hauling picture cars they use in the filming. Okay, what's it for? TV show called Fargo. Season 4.
Wow.
I don't know if have you seen
Yeah.
season 4, 1950?
No, I haven't seen the season, but
Oh,
every episode of it I have seen. It's always in snow. So you didn't beat it that year, I'm assuming. That they're
um, started off fall, roughly September, October timeframe.
you got to understand when we came back from, I probably just made a real loud noise on that. When we came back from the first deployment, um, I had a real bitter taste with the news and media, the way that they were covering
Oh,
the war,
yeah.
and I did not appreciate our I did not appreciate our military being a statistic
Oh, because all they
on
would
that.
show is soldiers getting hurt.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just it was like there was no real coverage on.
Soldier saves Iraqi boy's life today.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah,
like that.
it was always just this. I went years without, even to this day.
Yeah, I
The
don't
only
either.
reason that we have Netflix is because my wife got it for whatever show that she watches.
Hmm.
And the funny thing was is I got into watching the Walking Dead because of a comic book that I had got from the MWR
Oh,
at S.P.O.D. They had the Walking Dead comic book there, and I still have it in a box over here. That was one of the few things I probably still have from the S.P.O.D.
wow.
And so yeah, I when I get to see something on television, it's very rare,
Hmm.
and it's somebody else's cable, not my own. So sorry. Back to you're working on Fargo. Sorry, folks. Rabbit Trail. I got that.
So I was there was two picture car haulers. I had a flatbed landall trailer. It's hydraulically driven, so the it looks like a step deck, but the bed can hydraulically raise up, so I can load multiple things, whatever, on it. Um, I worked that TV show until March, April, when the COVID hiatus kind of hit. Um, I made really good money working that, and I really liked doing that. I didn't have to deal with a lot of people. I was guaranteed 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. If I only worked 6 hours, I'm getting 12 hours no matter what.
Wow,
And it's union.
that's the life.
It's
That's
union. So even if I only worked one day that week, but it's 12 hours, I get 8 hours of straight time, 4 hours of time and a half. And I was 37 or 38 an hour on top of it.
you were living the
I
dream.
was
You were
doing real good. I was doing
living.
real good. And the funny thing is, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the COVID hiatus hit, I'd been looking into travel trailers because there's a couple RV parks around Chicago, kind of on the outskirts. There's one southwest of Chicago in a city called Joliet, and there's another one, another like an hour southeast of Chicago, or Joliet is southwest. Uh, I forget the name of the town, but it's in Indiana, southeast of Chicago by an hour. Um, and that was the affordable one. And the RV park, I'm like, what's better than living in Chicago and paying 2,000 a month for thin walled apartment, studio, like open floor plan. The only door is on the bathroom, like, and other people had lived there, so the carpet was dingy and not real nice looking place. Um, and it's not. It was in an okay neighborhood. I didn't have to worry about my truck getting broke into, but either way. So 2 or 3 weeks before the COVID hiatus hit, I just bought a travel trailer. I didn't pay it off. I put it on payments because I'm still building my credit at this point. And then the COVID hiatus hit. I'm like, oh crap. So go through that, deal with all that stuff. Um, Fast forward 3 years. So from the time I started working the film industry, 3 years later, I leave the film industry because it's a lot of, hey, Brian, I need you to go take a UA because you're going to start work tomorrow. Like, you couldn't tell me a couple weeks ago? I'm in, you're working a side gig because you'll work steadily for 2 months and then you won't hear anything for 2 or 3 months. And then you'll get a call. You got to start work the next day. See, we work side gigs out there, but you tend to burn bridges too, because if you're working a side gig for somebody, hey, sorry, gotta go, gone tomorrow. Well, they're not going to bring you back. You're unreliable.
Yeah.
So the last 6 months I was working in the film industry, I was only being what's called being day played. So they're only working me 1 or 2 days a week. And I was actually starting to get behind on my bills, my truck payment. The only thing I could focus on at the time was making sure the parking spot for my travel trailer was paid, because they can immediately boot you out. And then I saw an ad for JB Hunt, and they had a sign-on bonus and all these other things, and it was regional. So I leave Monday, drive around the Midwest, picking up and making deliveries, and then I'm back on Friday. So I still get my weekends. That doesn't sound too bad. Plus, sign-on bonus, big company. So if I want to move, I can just transfer to wherever. Like, all right. And that sign-on bonus came right at the right time, and I got caught up on all my bills. Then the paycheck started coming in, and I started getting ahead and saving ahead. And then I June of 2023. I transferred out to the Portland yard, so now I went from regional to now a local driver in Portland, driving for JB Hunt, picking up shipping containers, 53 footers
Oh no.
at BNSF off Highway 30. It really wasn't that bad though. I didn't have to get in them. I didn't have to touch the freight or anything like that.
Didn't have to do inventories on them.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I did that for about a year. And a year and a half prior to that, a guy I grew up with was a recruiter for the Operating Engineers Union in the Portland, out of Gladstone, Oregon, just south of Portland. And I remember messaging him because they have a simulator, a trailer with a simulator where it's, with a bunch of screens, and it's like being in an excavator. And I was like, oh, that's so cool, but I'm too old and fat to be getting into that, because we think old school construction where as soon when you get into construction, you're having to really work hard physically to before you step into a machine or anything like that. And I messaged him, and I was like, man, that's so cool. I wish I could get into that, but I'm too old to get in a ditch and be digging all day. That would kill me physically. And he goes, no, dude, we're the Operating Engineers Union. And let me reread that. Operating Engineers Union. Operators.
Nice.
I'm like, okay, well, how do I go about that? And again, I reiterated, I was like, I'm too old and broken to be in a ditch all day digging for 8, 9, 12 hours a day. And he goes, no, man, you might help, but you're not going to be in the ditch for 12 hours. You'll be in a dump truck or a bobcat or something most of your day. You might get out and help to spread the dirt or something, or, even it out, but you don't do that. Okay, well, that's cool. So he gave me the info. Out of like 1,000 applicants, I was ninth, because they rank you. And that's just applying, interview, paperwork, getting it all together. So I was ninth out of 1,000 people.
Holy smokes.
A month or two later, and I had saved up for this as well, because it's a month-long training program. They pay you mileage, but it's very little. It basically just pays for fuel. I'm going from Vancouver to Canby, which is a bit of a drive.
Is that out by Fort Riley?
No,
Is that
no, that's like south of Clackamas off 205.
okay?
But it's kind of in the countryside. Um, I go through the program. They get you your rigging card, your forklift certification. They get you some hours on a mini excavator. They get you some hours on a dozer, on a Gradall, the big forklift with the big tires. Um, they get you some time rigging with cranes, so you can get a little bit of experience doing it. They go through, the first week is all paperwork and tests, so you learn about the different types of rigging for cranes and flying things. And
Are they soldier friendly? I mean, were there any like like veteran preference points or anything like that for the hire?
I don't know if it was a veteran preference point, but when you turn in your initial application, you get extra, like there's a certain amount of points that are accumulated when putting it together. How long you've worked at a job, whether you have a CDL or like any college education or things like that. And I knew I got extra points for being former military. Um, but as far as like going through the program, there were a couple of other veterans that weren't doing so hot. Um, but it wasn't like they took extra time with them. One was a younger guy. He was mid 30s. I want to say he'd been to Afghanistan once, but it had been quite a few years. And he seemed like he was doing all right. I mean, not in the program. I just mean like as a person, you know. He just didn't seem like he had the mentality for one of for rigging, because the rigging is if you've never messed with it or done with it, it's easy to get screwed up on the test because it asks you trick questions. Crane work, you know. So complete the program out of 32 people. Um, I finished fourth, and that ranking is what really matters because you go to the union from you're now considered a pre-apprentice. You go to the union, and that ranking, if you're number one, you're the first one to get called. But because I have a CDL, I was the first one to get a call, even though I was fourth. So I went to work for a crane company for almost a year. Did not enjoy it because I wanted to get into excavation work, and crane operators, I can't say all, you can never say all, but a good number of them have a superiority complex. Like I'm not sure how to explain it. Like a self-entitlement superiority kind of complex. So they're pretty rude and disrespectful towards people they deem as an apprentice, even though, again, I give pushback. Like, hey guys, like at the time, I'm a 43-year-old apprentice. Yes, I'm a little older, but I've been around the block. I've done some stuff. You don't have to treat me this way. And what I mean, like a good example would, like one of the crane superintendents who was my age, was oiling on a crane at Beaverton High School, and the same age as me, crane superintendent came by and he goes, "Hey, a good apprentice would go get that ladder." I said, "I guess I'm not a good apprentice." And he kind of gave me that stink eye, and I was like, "Hey, look, we don't need to do that. If you want that ladder over here, you can just say, hey, can you please go get that ladder?" He did not like that.
Were you no? Were you doing this profession when the crane collapsed at Seattle?
Um, I'm not sure when that happened, to be perfectly honest.
I say it was at least. I want to say it was about 3 years ago. I could be off on my time frame, but
No, because the previous, so from um, June 2024 is when I went through that program.
okay. So you're like you're running and gunning right now in this.
Hmm. And I wanted to get into dirt work, but they threw me on the crane side of things. And I made good money, you know, decent money, but my hours were watched and restricted. And, you know, my last 6 weeks with that crane company, and I know the company owner, he would sue me if I mentioned his company name while bad mouthing them, or what he would deem. So I'm not going to say the crane company, but my last 6 weeks with that company before I had to go back, because after a year you have to go back for 2 weeks of training, and then every 6 months after that to do 2 weeks of training. Call it school. And I knew I had school coming up, so my last 6 weeks I was at a Google job site in the Dalles, and that was an absolutely terrible experience. Now I'm out of town, and they were only giving us 40 hours a week, which you're like, okay, cool, you're getting 40 hours. But when you're a construction worker, the thought process behind it is, I'm working out of town. Let's work 50, 60 hours a week. That's why I'm working out of town. Wasn't the case. And then I started getting, my last 3 weeks over there, it started feeling like military life. Like I was a 22-year-old kid again. I was being micromanaged. You know, you've been standing around for a second. I need you to keep busy. Go do stuff. A lot of busy work when you're an apprentice working with cranes. A lot of busy work. And I struggle to do busy work. I'd rather just not make money than do busy work.
It was. I think we've had a lot of conversations on here about
Keeping gainfully employed,
polishing floors and cleaning latrines and that type of
mopping sidewalks in the rain.
yes. Yeah. So now bring us to today. What's
I knew I wasn't going to sit around long because I have a CDL. So I'll go through the training program, or I go to 2 weeks of school. This is just more seat time with equipment and learning grades and doing more math and refreshing it and stuff. And I sat around for 3 days, and I got a call to go to work for Goodfellow Brothers, an excavation company, who I had worked with at Beaverton High School. And I actually knew some of the guys because they were working there, and then they got put on this job at Fort Stevens State Park,
down in
Warrenton.
yeah, the
It's a big park,
yeah.
big state park. But we're modernizing it. So on the LMNO section, so when you pull into the furthest south entrance, and you go to a four-way stop sign, you turn left, it goes to RV spots. But we have that blocked off because we're putting in sewer lines, water lines, electricity, all kinds of stuff. And there's one guy I don't get along with too well, but it's really not that bad. And everyone else, real cool, chill. I've managed to get seat time in the equipment versus on the crane side, doing that for a year. I think altogether, I've got like maybe 15 minutes of seat time in a crane versus my first week with these guys. They're like, hey, go get in that skid steer. We need to backfill all these ditches. I'm like, oh, okay.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. Because nothing gets you the experience like actually doing the job.
Exactly.
So it's right on.
And there's the one guy, one laborer. He's a laborer. We're union, so laborers are only allowed like very small number of hours each week they can operate equipment, and that's so that guys like me, when I become a journeyman, don't lose my job because we make more than laborers. Even as an apprentice, I make more than a journeyman laborer. Because if he knows how to run it, they generally do. But if he jumps in it and does it every time, I'm not going to get my hours or experience, and then it's going to potentially put other people out of a job in the future. Like, well, that laborer who makes less, he can run that hoe. That's what we call the excavators. He can run that hoe, so just let him do it. It's cheaper. Like, no, this is a union job. So on Thursday, before they cut us loose, they had me jump in an excavator and clean up because they were backfilling, but it leaves a mess of gravel. So I'm going through with the excavator on the muck bucket, and I'm scraping it clean, and I could just feel the eyes on me from like one or two guys like, why does he get to get in that and I don't? I have experience, I can do that. You know what I mean? Because I remember at one point somebody had stopped me to ask me a question, and I could see him just giving me the stink eye, and I think it's absolutely hilarious. Like, we joined our prospective unions. If this is what you want to do, you need to join my union. Sorry, not sorry. And that's where I'm up to.
Outstanding. So now I'm probably gonna promo. So single, married. You're not married. You're not.
I don't even have a girlfriend. Not even any
Okay,
prospects.
gonna put it out here. He is available, ladies. He's available. We're
One day a week.
This isn't a dating program, but I think we're gonna have to make the exception on this one. We got to get this man married off. Um, no, outstanding. Has it been who do you still stay in contact with? Like, do you get to see any of the fellows besides funerals? Do you get to see any of the fellows from deployment?
Um, Joshua Peters he was one of my driver from our last deployment. I was at his house last weekend with a mini excavator digging up his backyard.
Right on.
He was putting in in-ground trampoline for his kids. He was going to do it by hand. I said, no, 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 no. Let me.
We're get well. You're kind of young enough, but not really. Um, but yeah, we're at that point in life where no, don't use let the machine do the work.
Yes, something we hear a lot. Say that a lot too.
Well, I'm going to come to the end of the tour here. What are there any books that you're reading, podcasts you're watching? What are you doing to feed your brain? Are you taking any classes at all? Are you reading any books on? Because I know you said you were had been studying psychology, and what are you doing to keep yourself fed and keep yourself straight?
There's multiple things. I have I have quotes that I tell myself every day. Um, the stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself affirmations. Like people joke about that stuff, but it's real. You,
I dude, I'm so naturally good looking that when it's I keep
you just
questioning.
look and just, yep.
It's like, why did I not go into modeling? I should have done it, but no, outstanding. Well, I'm gonna thank you for your time. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Um, Definitely good connecting, and hoping to hope to see you more than just at something like this or at funerals. So
Yeah.
get reunions coming up. 2146 reunions coming up August 9th, I
Ninth.
believe. So
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure to have that Saturday off. So we're working 6 days a week out there. So,
yeah,
um, you know, I will. I'm gonna bring something up because I've felt this way when I get people off the street, random individuals, and oh, you went overseas. Thank you for your service. I've never known what to say. Like, you're welcome, or I was happy to do it, or
I will tell you one of the things is thank you for being somebody worth serving for.
okay, that makes them think about themselves a little bit.
Yeah, it was very uncomfortable, especially coming back when we still had the deserts. That
Oh,
was very uncomfortable coming back and people saying that, but it was in time. It was like, no, thank you for supporting us. You know,
yeah.
that just think little things like that. It helps take that awkwardness off of you, but it also it's like, hey, we appreciate you.
Mm.
It's nice knowing that there are people at home that care for what we do. I still anytime I see if I especially if I see that World War II hat or a Korean hat or Vietnam hat, I'm doing the same thing.
Oh, I actually do that too,
Yeah.
especially those Vietnam guys, because they had quite the negative reaction when they came home. If people found out they were over there,
It
and
was
I even say that like, hey, I know you boys didn't get a welcome home, but I had one like actually start crying because he said nobody's ever said welcome home. Like, wow, 30, 40 years later, 50 years later, wow.
my dad would talk that was one of the few things he ever talked about how poorly they were treated coming
Yeah.
home, and it was I was glad that I was overwhelmed with the experience that we had coming home, um, especially going through Dallas when
thousands of people
oh
cheering
my
and
gosh,
screaming. Like I felt like a
it's
rock star.
there's those times I still get choked up when I think about how they were all just like applauding for us and giving us like phone cards and gift cards and stuff as we're walking by, and it's like, no, this isn't. This is for the folks that were in Fallujah. This is for the folks
Hmm.
that were up in Afghanistan. Not me, you know. But at the same time, it's like you might be the only vet that they got a chance to really do that for or to thank. You know, I think there's enough people out there who appreciate what we did do and what we gave up for that service.
Yeah.
So, all right, brother.
All right, bro.
You,
Oh.
yeah, that's harder to do now. The older we get, that's
Right. If I don't start my day with 3 ibuprofen, it's a bad day.